All right, our number 9 running back in college football is DJ Giddens out of Kansas State, who, along with Avery Johnson next year, Dalton, it should be an electric ground game. We talked about how electric the UCF ground game is going to be in the Big 12. Kansas State also with a dual threat quarterback and then one of the best running backs in America, and DJ Giddens as well. I cannot wait to see what K-State's able to do next year with those two leading the rushing attack.
This running game is going to be the reason that they're in contention for a Big 12 title. I mean, Avery Johnson's a dynamic runner at quarterback, but it all starts with DJ Giddens, man. And now that Treshaun Ward is transferred out to Boston College, Giddens has the backfield to himself. And I'll tell you what, he's ultra reliable. 223 carries last year with 0 fumbles, 69 forced missed tackles is a top 10 mark. 40 explosive runs of 10 or more yards is the 7th most in the country. He's just super reliable. He's super tough. He gets downhill, breaking tackles. He's we always think about Kansas State playing this physical brand of football, and DJ Giddens embodies that, man. They run all these gap schemes. They get downhill powers and counters, and they've got the read option thing going with Avery Johnson. But Giddens getting downhill is going to be, he's just, some of these backs I like to call the engine of their offense, and there's no question that Giddens is that for the Wildcats.
Absolutely, man. He's an elite athlete, too. So we finally got access, Dalton, to PFF's game athleticism score metric, or gas metric, that we'll be referencing a lot on this show probably now that we have access to it, which is really cool. You can kind of, use tracking data to show how fast the guy is, how good of his movement ability is, and just how good of an athlete he is, which is better than probably combine data at least, because at least you're seeing these guys on the field. DJ Giddens tested out as a 95th percentile athlete at running back last year in our gas metric. And the year before, he was 93rd percentile. So he had a top speed over 21 miles per hour last year. Like I said, he's a bigger running back too at 6'1", 212 pounds. I really like DJ Giddens a lot, man. And I didn't initially have him in my top 10 list initially. But I mean, more that I watched his tape, I was like, you know what? He probably deserves to be at least very, very close to it. And he was right outside the top 10 for me. He was definitely in the top 15 range for me. Broke a tackle on 31% of his carries last year. That was the 89th percentile for running backs. I think he could work in a gap or zone scheme, although you did mention that they run a lot of gap there, and I like his transition to a gap scheme there. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of DJ Giddens. Like you mentioned, 0 fumbles last year on 253 touches, obviously 100th percentile. I like DJ Giddens a lot, man. What are some of the negatives with DJ Giddens right now as you look ahead to 2024?
It's funny that you mentioned the gas score there around 95, because there's sometimes I feel like he maybe doesn't have that consistent breakaway speed.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something. Sometimes I just wonder. I'm like, maybe I just need to watch every single carry and see it consistently. But I feel like there's just maybe a half step more to go before he's really a home run hitter. I could be wrong on that. We might get to the season and he's going to start popping off 40, 50-yard runs, but there's just it feels right now, at least the way he runs, like he's more of a bit more of a physical grinder than he is a home run hitter. If he adds another half step, then you've got an elite guy that could be by the end of the year on the top 5 of this list, especially with the way they scheme up the running game down there in Manhattan.
Yeah, I think it's a great point, because he actually last year he was in the 43rd percentile of running backs in terms of breakaway run rate. So even though he scored as a really elite athlete, he still didn't really translate to getting that many breakaway runs. Still only had 16 breakaway runs on 223 attempts last year, which was good for like a 7% rate, which, like I said, is below average for running backs. I also think as a receiver, there's still work to be done. Obviously, he had 3 to 26 receiving yards last year, which is really, really good. But I don't think he didn't break that many tackles on his receptions. Only had 6 broken tackles on his 30 catches, which is 20%, and 38th percentile at least as well. So I think that he's got average hands too. Had a couple drops last year. So I like DJ Giddens a lot, and that's why I don't know. I'm a little bit lower on him than you are, at least right now, because I just think there's so many running backs in college football that are really, really good, and he's more of a top 15 guy for me. But yeah, I think it's a pretty fair breakdown of him. And how excited are you to see him with Avery Johnson next year? Obviously, Will Howard now gone, transferring to Ohio State. Now they got Avery Johnson in there, who is a true sophomore now, top 10 quarterback recruit coming out of high school, and obviously a lot of comparisons to Colin Klein because of how good of a runner he is as well. I personally am very excited to see those two work together, but how excited are you to see Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens kind of do that read option game down there in Manhattan?
the two of them together are going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think actually the biggest question for me is losing Colin Klein as their offensive coordinator, moving on to Texas A&M, which is it's very ironic that we keep making that comparison with Johnson, but they are kind of built similarly with similar skill sets. But no, these two guys are going to be the centerpiece. It's going to be really exciting to watch, especially. I'm really curious to see if Johnson can become a top tier quarterback in the Big 12. I think it's one of the biggest X factors in the conference. His feet are dynamic, man. If you told me he ran a 4.4, I wouldn't be shocked in the least bit. They have to get it together in the passing game to try to get the pressure off because they're going to see a ton of loaded boxes too now. Everybody knows Avery Johnson and DJ Giddens are coming right downhill at him in all sorts of directions. But the balance and the play calling is going to be the key for them. But these two guys in the same backfield should be really, really exciting for them.
I agree. And I think another question, besides Colin Klein leaving as offensive coordinator, obviously, Kansas State last year was 21st in the country in run blocking grade. They lose a few starters on that offensive line, namely Cooper Beebe. KT Leviston was also drafted as well. Hayden Gillum, their center, is also gone. They might have even lost more than that. But they lost a few stars on the offensive line. That was dominant offensive line last year. So Giddens is going to have to produce probably a little bit more on his own next year. Whereas, last year he had a really good offensive line helping him out. Next year is going to be a little bit different, I think. So I still have faith in Kansas State. They always seem to have a pretty good offensive line, so I still have faith in them to develop guys behind them. But whenever you lose a superstar guard like Cooper Beebe, it's going to be tough. And other starters on the offensive line that was one of the best in the country too at run blocking, it's going to be tough for DJ Giddens. Now, I do think the read option game with him and Avery Johnson will help out in that defenses are going to have to account for Avery Johnson in every single rushing play. But I do think the loss of those offensive linemen will be tough for DJ Giddens a little bit. He's gonna have to create more on his own next year, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just gonna be a big schematic element to it. Klein gone, those two guys, and again, I wonder if they try to get the vertical passing game going. If you can, the big key for them is going to be controlling safeties and controlling the number of defenders in the box, right? And they're already used to running into heavy boxes. I think they saw loaded boxes at a top 30 rate last season. Yeah. So it's going to be K-State's going to be a lot of fun schematically on top of the fact where, look, Cooper Beebe and those guys are gone, but they always play really physical football, no matter who's out there, man. And DJ Giddens fits that. And Johnson's more of the speed element. You're going to see him pop off some long runs and be like, wow, who's this guy? Man, he's just got a boatload of speed at the quarterback position. But no, Giddens for sure is the engine. He's going to be the attitude and just carrying that physical brand of football that they play on both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's our breakdown of our number 9 running back in college football, DJ Giddens, out of Kansas State. Make sure you guys stay tuned for more of our individual player breakdowns for the rest of our top 10 running backs list.